this gentleman over there, that's Kenneth Sanders. He's our engineer. He's pushing all the buttons tonight. He's making all this stuff go. We can't do it without him. He's the most important part.
1 minute.
Last year when we did this, the transmitter decided to blow up about 30 minutes before we went on the air, and he had to take off running and go fix it. I'm going to go ahead and silence my phone so my wife doesn't call me. Y'all may want to do the same thing for a minute. All right, Jay.
Coming up on 30.
I'm going to hit this red button right
30.
here. This is our safety backup camera. Starts. Okay, there's your backup camera.
The rest is up on you.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is 90.3 KEDM Monroe. Good evening. I'm Corey. All of our candidates being here, we're going to go about an hour and 15 minutes or so, and then get some of these folks back where they need to be. The University of Louisiana Monroe Student Government Association. David Hernandez has some words for us this evening.
All right, good evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is David Hernandez. I'm the ULM SGA president. I thank all of you candidates for coming tonight. It's really an honor to represent SGA, to have you all here at our beautiful university here on the bayou that I get to call my home. We look forward to hearing from all of you. We look forward to seeing what you all bring to the table. And on behalf of the SGA, again, we thank you. Next Tuesday, please be sure to tune back in, same place, same time, on 7/4 to hear from our House and Senate candidates to see what they bring to the table too. And again, we look forward to hearing from what you have to say today, and thank you again.
And at this time, we'd like to bring up Jay Mulhern. He's the president of the board of directors for the Monroe Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Corey. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. On behalf of the Monroe Chamber of Commerce, we're happy to be part of this and proud to support this forum and look forward to what you gentlemen have to say. Also, I would like to remind you also that early voting begins September 30th. It runs through October 7th, with the exception of Sunday, October the 1st. Early voting runs 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. You can do it in person at the Registrar of Voters office, and you will need to bring an ID and LA wallet. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. We appreciate the Monroe Chamber for helping us out, making this possible tonight. And we're going to meet some other folks a little later this evening who are with us and talk a little bit about some of the other issues. Before we begin tonight, I want to mention all of the candidates one time. Not all of the candidates are with us tonight. Candidates for governor of Louisiana: Benjamin Barnes, Patrick Henry Barthel, Danny Cole, Oscar Omar Dantzler, Xavier Ellis, Petron Gagnon, Sharon Hewitt, Jeffrey East, Zan John, Jeff Landry, Hunter Lundy, Richard Nelson, John Schroeder, Frank Skurlock, Stephen Wagisback, and Sean Wilson. So we've got a very crowded field, and these are the gentlemen who are with us tonight. We appreciate you all for being with us, and audience, take note of who's here tonight and made the effort to get to Monroe tonight. We appreciate you being here, gentlemen. We'll begin with our opening statements, and before we begin tonight, we drew to figure out who would get the first statement tonight, and it went to Mr. John, who's not with us tonight, so it moves next to Mr. Hunter Lundy. Mr. Lundy, I'll give you 2 minutes to make an opening statement. Tell folks about yourself and why you're running.
Thank you, Corey.
So I'm Hunter Lundy from Lake Charles, Louisiana. I was the third of 4 children to Pat and Patricia Lundy. My father worked at the Port of Lake Charles. My mother was a kindergarten teacher and then a college professor at McNeese. I'm the father of 3, the grandfather of 6. My oldest is a fire captain. My youngest is a ship captain, and my daughter is a professor at the community college. And so I practiced law for the last 40 years in many states. I've been an advocate for many different people from all walks of life. I've probably made my reputation helping those in economically deprived communities. But that's what I've done, and I've also been a developer and a business person. I've also preached at times. So I've done a lot of different things. I've traveled the world. So this is a time for me in which I can serve. So in the end of 2021, I was told by 3 or 4 different people, this is what I should do. The last person was my 90-year-old mother, who said this is what I was supposed to do. So I left the law practice in 2022 and began campaigning. Sometime early in the year, I came here and I met with Dr. Berry. You know, when you look at my push card, you'll see that I believe that the answer to changing and improving Louisiana is the fact that we've got to join education with poverty and with crime. You know, education is the key, and we have to start when they're 3 years old. I've got a sister who's a retired kindergarten teacher. My mother's a retired kindergarten teacher. I know a little bit about education. And so, yes, I finished high school in Lake Charles. I started McNeese, but then I went to Millsaps College and I played football, graduated there, went to law school, worked for a federal judge, moved back to Lake Charles. And I've been the CEO of a law firm that's had offices in many states for the last 36 years. So this is my time. And again, education is the key. We reduce crime. Illiteracy runs hand in hand with incarceration. And so I have a plan. I'll be able to share that when I have more time. But right now I got 10 seconds. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy, for being with us this evening. Our next opening statement goes to Mr. Richard Nelson. Sir?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm Representative Richard Nelson. I represent Mandeville and the North Shore Lake Pontchartrain. I'm 37 years old, in case anybody's wondering about that. You can't really tell on the radio, but I'm told I look a little bit young. I grew up in Mandeville. I was valedictorian at Mandeville High. I was an Eagle Scout. I went to LSU, got a degree in biological engineering, did it in 3 years. Wasn't ready to give up LSU football yet, so I went for 3 more years at LSU Law School. Graduated at the top of my class, and then I joined the Foreign Service, the U.S. Department of State. Moved up to Washington, D.C., and then I spent 7 years as a State Department officer and diplomat, going all around the world, protecting embassies around overseas from terrorism and espionage. So lived in Washington, D.C., Germany, and the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. Came back to D.C. and ran a bunch of security projects in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Pakistan. And then at that time, my second son had been born, and I told my wife, hey, let's try and go back to Louisiana. You know, I wanted to raise our kids here. And so we came back to Mandeville, and I got a job in the private sector in 2017. You know, most of my friends now have gone from undergraduate or from high school, and they're in Texas and Florida and anywhere else. But I was able to come back, and I said I want to try and fix that problem. So I ran for office in 2019, got elected to the State House, and I've been there since then. And I've really been focused on the bigger problems. You know, if Louisiana were just average, we would all live 4 years longer and get a 33% raise. And that's if we were just average. Guess what? You drive across the border to Texas, you become average. You get 3.5 years of your life back and a 33% raise. So that's the cost of bad government in Louisiana. I think it's a tragedy. You know, the last time Louisiana added a congressional seat was 1910. So that's how long these problems have been around. We haven't grown faster than the rest of the country since 1910. So we've had significant challenges. We've had them for a long time, and I think that's what we have to address. You look at the states next door to us, Texas and Florida, you know, they've grown 4 times or 6 times faster than us in the last 10 years. So we really have to look at completely changing the system and making it like Texas and Florida, restructuring the tax system, and I think also fixing our education system. And so these are things that I focused on in the legislature. I think that's really how you bring prosperity to Louisiana, how you change our future. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Richard Nelson. Next up in opening statements, Mr. Frank Skurlock. Sir, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. I'm Frank Skurlock. I'm from New Orleans. I was born at Baptist Hospital in the city of New Orleans. Most people know my family because my father, John, he was a professor at not only Centenary but Tulane. Worked for NASA, and somewhere along the line he invented the inflatable amusement ride. That's the little bouncy castle thing, which became an amazing family business based out of New Orleans. We have an office here in town. Over my career for 40 years, I'm 61, we've opened up 500 retail stores renting inflatables nationwide. I've traveled the world as well. I've opened factories. As you can imagine, what happened to New Orleans during Katrina, I not only maintained our company, which was headquarters based there, we grew in adversity. And it's because we bring people together, we assess needs, we find out our resources, and we lead. And that's why I'm running as an independent, because I was born Republican, there's no doubt about that, down south. However, I did run for mayor of the city of New Orleans as a Democrat in 2017. And the reason I ran was because I tried to open up a theme park down there, Jazzland, that's been closed. And when I wasn't able to open it, even though we brought the city of New Orleans $4 million cash to buy, to start a redevelopment for $1 billion, they said no. And I said, something's wrong. So while education's important, I think the attracting of business and growing business that funds education, that funds everything's here. It relieves the taxpayers off of the individuals, because one of the first things I'm going to do is remove the state income tax. I've lived in Florida. I've watched it prosper. I have 3 amazing kids that grew up there that all now live in Orleans Parish. And what I will bring is a uniting. I will bridge everybody together, because we're seeing it today on party politics. Not only Republicans and Democrats, it's Republicans against Republicans. We're not going anywhere. As we know, a couple candidates aren't here, but the reality is they're broken. We're here to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Frank Spurlock. Opening statement next comes down to the end to Mr. Daniel Cole. Mr. Cole, 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Daniel Cole. I'm from a little town called Trout. It's near Gino, Louisiana. I am a school teacher of 32 years. I teach at Bolton High School, so I have a fundamental experience of what is wrong with the system and how to fix it. And I'm just going to go ahead and explain what my vision is, and I look forward to giving the finite details. The ITAP program has not done what it was established to do by the state. This is why it's so important to you that we have somebody from without of the system to come from within the system to fix the system. What that means is, this is why that you have a state income tax. This is why we can't pay teachers. This is why we can't pay policemen and firemen and other state workers, is because the money is being drained away from our state. And this is not happening nowhere in the country except here. And if we're going to straighten out this politics in this state, we've got to do it with straightening out corruption. And I am your candidate if you feel the same way.
Thank you. That's Daniel Cole. Next, the opening statement goes to Mr. Xavier Ellis. Sir, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I'm going to start off by first saying I thank God for the opportunity to be here at Bungalow. Secondly, I want to thank the organizers for putting this event on and giving us the opportunity to give our platform to y'all. And last but not least, a lot of times all we need is an opportunity. All we need is a platform. And I want to thank, she's not here today, but Tiffany Lewis for giving me that opportunity to have a platform to express my genius back at J.S. Clark Leadership Academy, where I started teaching back in 2017. So real quick, my name is Xavier Ellis. I am from a small town that y'all might have heard of, Faraday, Louisiana, home of Jerry Lee Lewis, Jimmy Swaggart. We also have a ton of athletes that have come out of there and done great things. When it comes to me, my background, I come from public school. I'm also a product of private college. I also know the ills of the welfare program, because that is what my mom, for the most part, was on throughout my childhood and even to this day. So from there, I knew that my opportunities, I had to go to college. Going to college, I went to Louisiana Christian University, where you might have heard Governor Jimmy Davis was from there. I went there, graduated with a Bachelor of History, minor in political science. So you might ask, why is Xavier Ellis in this race? Xavier Ellis is in this race because there's no one else that can speak directly to all the issues that are going on, whether it's our migration, whether it's the teacher pay raise issue, whether it's the issue of, as some of my opponents have just brought up, this idea of low expectations in our state. I'm running pretty much, I can tell y'all, this is a NBA and NFL draft move for me, because I feel that I am the change that we need. You need someone in the governor's mansion who's going to think outside the box. We don't need career politicians that are not here tonight. Let me say that again. We don't need career politicians that are not here tonight. We need somebody that's going to be a change agent for our state and move our state forward and bring the realness and unity that we need from all walks of life. So I say that. I'll say more later. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Xavier Ellis. All right, we'll get to our questions. And tonight, gang, we're going to do 1-minute answers. And again, reminder, Chris is on the front row with the time cards, and he'll keep us straight there. The first question goes to you, Mr. Ellis. We drew earlier, and you got the short straw. You get to go first here, all right? So I want to ask you, what is the biggest challenge that the state of Louisiana is facing?
I would say this, the biggest issue that we have is our migration. Going to Florida, Texas cannot be our solution. We can't continue to lose our brightest minds and people in this state. We have to address economic opportunities. We have to bring jobs here. We have to get out of this idea that I'm going to give you a job just because I know you. Or as some of my opponents talked about, the corrupt political system that we live in here in Louisiana. It's entrenched all of our culture. We have to address this issue, and I think our migration, for the most part, is our biggest issue, because if you're losing your people, you're losing your resources, you're losing the economic ability to compete on a global scale. And for me, what I would say, y'all, my goal is for us to get into the top 25 and stagger up into the top 10, 5, and so forth. That is my plan. That is what I'm running on, and what I want to do as y'all next governor is get us into where we're competitive against these other states. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. The question next goes to Mr. Hunter Lundy. Mr. Lundy, what's the biggest challenge that you think the state of Louisiana is facing?
Well, we're the #1 state in the nation in poverty. So poverty is a problem. Until we change the perception of the rest of the nation of Louisiana, we will not grow economically. So I've always said education, incarceration, poverty, crime, they're all together. We need to clean up what I would call impoverished areas, blighted areas. We need new redemption of property laws. We can do that. I will have all of that ready when we call the legislature into session after I'm the governor. So we got to change that. When we do that, the economy grows because the rest of the country looks at us differently. And so poverty is the #1 problem. We pay our law enforcement down at the bottom. We pay our firemen the last in the nation. They're the lowest paid. And our educators, we didn't live up to the promise that we gave them. So coming from a family of educators, we're going to give them a raise. We're going to give the custodians, we're going to give the school bus drivers, we're going to do the things that we say we do. We're not going to see, as somebody said, I ran it on a commercial. The red fought the blue, and then the red fought the red, and then we didn't have a budget that anybody knew what was in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy. The question next goes to you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Richard Nelson, what's the biggest challenge Louisiana's facing?
So I think a lack of jobs and opportunity is one of the key drivers. I mean, I think without economic opportunity, all these other problems, you can't really fix them. You know, everybody has problems with crime and infrastructure and education. You need the money to fix those problems. When you look at where people are going, they're going to Texas, they're going to Florida because of economic opportunity. Jobs are there. And so, I've spent the last 4 years in the legislature addressing this problem. I brought a comprehensive package of tax reform bills to actually build a system like Texas and Florida, the states that actually work, that are actually growing. Texas added 4 million people in the last 10 years, the entire population of Louisiana. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I brought these solutions, I've refined them over the years. I had a study commission that actually dug in the entire tax code, and I brought a new package and refined package of these bills this year. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to really dig into it and make a system that works like Texas and Florida so that we can actually get kids here, that we can have the jobs and opportunities so people aren't leaving. And then once you have that, you have the tax base to go and solve all these other problems that we have here and we've had here for generations.
Thank you. That's Richard Nelson. The question next goes to Mr. Frank Scurlock. Mr. Scurlock, what's the biggest challenge the state of Louisiana is facing?
I believe it's division. You see, when I walked inside the building tonight, I saw that wonderful sign outside that said unity. And we're broken. We are. We're the South versus North. New Orleans is the largest city. We're the largest city in the South until you get to Houston or going to Jacksonville. We have the port. We have the river. If we had a better economic system, if we had better control of the city of New Orleans itself, think about the opportunities we have here. So why don't we have those? It's crime. Crime keeps us away. Crime will be the #1 issue right out of the box. I've been meeting with several law enforcement. I give them 4 words: whatever it
takes. And the first thing I'll say is that we are different than everybody else. We're a spiritual state. We have parishes, not county. So therefore, if we understand the principles of above, we can lead and we can succeed.
That's Frank Skurlock. The question next goes to Daniel Cole. Mr. Cole, what's the biggest challenge the state of Louisiana is facing?
The biggest challenge is corruption. Everything that they said can be drawn back to the ITAP program. We are being robbed. This state is the only state that's going on in the country. It is the only place that's happening in the world. They are doing business in other states and they're paying property tax. They do not do it in the state of Louisiana. Until we have somebody from without to come within to fix those problems, we're going to continue to have the same rhetoric. We're going to continue to have the same politics. Hey, how are you going to fund this? Hey, it's going to be, we can't raise taxes. Taxes are right. We do income taxes. Where's the money going to come from? I'll tell you, when it is restored to its purpose, and we will unleash prosperity in this city and in this state. It is going to take a man with passion. It's going to take a man with direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Daniel Cole. The question next goes to Mr. Lundy. You'll be up first on this one. Sometimes here in North Louisiana, we feel a little forgotten. What issues do you plan to address in North Louisiana, and how would you get those things done?
Well, I have one son that finished at Louisiana Tech. I have a daughter that finished at LSU. I had another son that ran track at McNeese and finished there. And so I went to Millsaps College to play football. I have an interest in North Louisiana. I came here first a year and a half ago working on this campaign. I have a vision for North Louisiana. We can take these universities and these trade schools and these community colleges, and we can create a research triangle here in North Louisiana. We don't have to go to North Carolina to research triangle. So I'm looking at an educational plan that will be entwined with business and government, that we can do it. I've also talked about doing an international airport in North Louisiana. I know they call one in New Orleans National, but with all the hurricanes and all the problems we have, those airports constantly get closed every time we have a storm. So I have a plan and a vision to do that. I've been talking to business leaders. I've been talking to contractors. So those are my thoughts for economic change in North Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy. The question next goes to Mr. Richard Nelson. Sometimes we feel forgotten up here in North Louisiana. What issues do you plan to address in North Louisiana, and how do you get those things done?
Yeah, so my wife is from Shreveport, so I like to say I'm married to North Louisiana. It gives me a separate focus on it, I think. But I think really the problem is the game that we're playing, right? So Huey Long set this system up in the 1920s and 30s so that all the money and all the control goes to Baton Rouge. And that's the system that we have today. So if you want to get your tax money back, you got to go and beg for it in Baton Rouge. And that's really the problem. If you are piling all your money basically through the income tax and the sales tax, and you send it down there, and then you send your state reps and your state senators to go up there and say, I need my jail fixed, I need my schools built, I need a road fixed, and that's the whole system. You know, that's the problem. You're never going to win that battle in North Louisiana because you don't have the same population as the south of I-10, where they have a higher population. So that money that you send down there in taxes, you don't ever get back. And I think that's the system you really have to break by decentralizing power and control like they have in Texas and Florida. That's part of my comprehensive tax plan. I think that's really how you solve the problem. And, you know, I think really that is the way. Keep your tax money here, use it to fix your problems instead of having to go down there and have to fight to get it back.
Thank you. That's Richard Nelson. Up next, Mr. Frank Skurlock. Mr. Skurlock, sometimes we feel forgotten up north of Louisiana. What issues would you plan to address in North Louisiana, and how do you get those things done?
Certainly. So I'm the candidate from New Orleans. I had the opportunity to drive up today. And the sadness was I had to drive through Mississippi, south of Jackson, to get here. And I recently heard that our current administration took funds appropriated for a new transportation highway coming up here, and they rerouted it to LSU football stadium. That's unbelievable. While I actually went to LSU and I support the academics and sports, but the reality is Ruston, Monroe, Shreveport. My family is from Shreveport. I'm blessed that my middle name is Miles. My descendant, he was in the Alamo. So we have land in DeSoto cattle and stuff. I've done it for many years as a child. I love Toledo Bend. I love nature. And you're right, the infrastructure, before we had 49, we were really isolated. At least we've got something to build on, and that's why I'm here. Because it's going to take leadership to have a vision, to plant a seed, and then the right administration executes it.
Thank you. That's Frank Skurlock. Up next, Mr. Daniel Cole. Mr. Cole, sometimes we feel forgotten in North Louisiana. What are some issues that you plan to address in North Louisiana? How do you get those things done?
Yes, as a teacher, I feel totally completely forgotten. I have dedicated my life to education. I have spent over $300,000 just to have the education that I have, not to mention the time. And so I understand the problems. My people have been here since the 1700s in this part of the state. My ancestors fought in the Battle of New Orleans in 1810, and we were given a land grant to come up here. So we're buried here. And you're going to get represented by a person from this state. You have the opportunity to elect somebody from this part of the state who has family here, who lives here, who's worked here. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Daniel Cole. The question next goes to Mr. Xavier Ellis. Mr. Ellis, sometimes we feel forgotten in North Louisiana. What issues would you address in North Louisiana, and how do you get them done?
So as a northern boy who went down to Opelousas and definitely noticed the cultural shock and difference between the north and the south of Louisiana, what I would say is the biggest issue that I would address is part of my platform, recreational infrastructure. What I mean in that is bringing the people's needs to the forefront. Take a place like Bastrop. I talked to the people, I went there. They say they need restaurants. So we gotta get out of this idea of going around to the municipalities and just saying, hey, we're gonna do whatever we wanna do that's good for business. No, you gotta bring the needs of the people's to the forefront. And that's what I plan to do under recreational infrastructure. Whether it's Opelousas needing a skating rink, whether it's Bastrop needing a restaurant, or a Faraday needing rural development. We have to work on those issues and bring the people's needs first. So that when I look at recreational infrastructure, that is what Xavier Ellis is about. And about bringing forth to help the north and help my area of the state continue to progress and move forward. Get into city planning and doing the work of that and not being redundant in our city planning.
Thank you. That's Mr. Xavier Ellis. And at this time, we'll take a quick break. We want to remind folks we're at the University of Louisiana Monroe tonight. We've got a large radio audience. This is also being carried on Facebook, and we've got a room full of media who want to know the answers to a lot more questions. We'll take a quick break and come right back. You're listening to the Meet the Candidate Forum on 90.3 KEDM, brought to you by Homeland Bank. All right. Everybody take a break for a minute. Get a breather. You're up next, Chris. I want to, for the folks that are in the room, Dr. Ronald Berry's with us tonight. Dr. Berry, thanks for letting us come out to ULM tonight. We appreciate that. We've got Lisa Miller in tow back there. Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate all of y'all's hard work here at the university. And the guy in the maroon shirt there, some of y'all don't know, that's Dr. Ray Morrison. He's the founding dean of VCOM and handles up on a lot of things for VCOM. So we appreciate VCOM and everything they do with the public radio station. Thank you. 20 seconds? Okay. Jay, you okay? All right, Chris, you're coming up next.
10, 5, 3, 2, 1.
This is 90.3 KEDM Public Radio. It's the Meet the Candidates Forum, brought to you by the ULM Student Government Association, the Monroe Chamber, and the West Monroe West Washita Chambers of Commerce, and 90.3 KEDM. Before we get too much further, I want to remind you we're back in the same room next Tuesday night. We're going to meet the folks who are running for House and Senate seats that are in Washita Parish or have a piece of their seat in Washita Parish, and we invite the public to come back out next Tuesday night when we do that, and we'll do this again on air on KEDM and across the world on Facebook. Before we continue too much further, I'm going to bring Chris Kelly up. Chris is the President of the West Monroe, West Washita Chamber of Commerce. Chris, come on up and say a good word to us.
Thank you. On behalf of the West Monroe, West Washita Chamber, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for bringing your views and elucidating on what your platforms really stand for. It's through that we can make a better informed decision in the upcoming election. Speaking of the upcoming election, absentee ballots requested by October 10th at 4:30 p.m. and must be returned by Friday, October 13th at 4:30 p.m. Of course, all that information is online at voterportal.sos.la.gov. And if you don't know about the ballot, download the Go Vote app, and you can find that also at voterportal.sos.la.gov. Thank you, candidates, for coming. We appreciate you tonight.
Thank you. All right, back to the questions. We're here at ULM tonight with our candidates for governor of the state of Louisiana. And the next question goes to Mr. Richard Nelson. You're up first. The current administration is moving us towards electric cars. Where does that leave the state of Louisiana? And what are your thoughts on that?
So I think, electric cars are not a problem per se. I think that one of the issues that we have is that most of our infrastructure funding comes through the gas tax, which electric vehicles don't pay. And so we've kind of struggled with this in the legislature for the last couple of years of trying to find some fair method of basically creating some tax because they're using the same infrastructure as everybody else, but they're not really paying for it because they're not paying the gas tax. And so, I think one of the challenges is finding some way, possibly through either an extra amount that they pay when they register their vehicle, so that they're offsetting those costs. And I think that's going to continue to become a bigger problem in the future as more and more cars switch to becoming electric. So I think looking at some kind of fee to offset that so that they're actually paying for the infrastructure, because obviously I think whatever part of the state you're in, you realize that the infrastructure is something that's really crumbling around the state, and we need more money to pay for that. And so I think having some kind of fee to offset the costs that's lost when the gas tax is not paid by those electric vehicles is really one of the biggest challenges. The other thing I would also be making sure that our grid is robust enough to support that infrastructure to distribute the power out to the areas to keep those things charged. So those are the two focuses that I think that the electric vehicles challenge pose to Louisiana.
Thank you. That's Mr. Richard Nelson. Mr. Frank Skurlock, question goes to you next. We're moving towards electric cars. Where does that leave the state of Louisiana?
I mentioned earlier that my father worked at NASA. And if you think about what they had to put together to go out of space, the first electric car, in my opinion, was the rover on the moon. So I've always admired that. And at my house, when I was a kid growing up, we had an electric lawnmower. Now, I have to admit, I ran over the extension cord one time and learned the hard way. But the reality is, I think there's a balance. Because my family also, we do own natural gas. We believe in it. We believe in oil. We understand the needs of the state, not only on land, but out in the Gulf. When I look at the state in total, I see what was working and I see what's empty now. We had the tallest building in the state, One Shell Square, is no longer. They left. They went to Texas. Now it's a bank. That's good. But look at all the other broken, empty buildings. It goes back to economy. How can that benefit us? And it's not taxing the people. It's bringing it to the people.
Thank you. That's Mr. Frank Skurlock. The question now comes down to the end of Mr. Daniel Cole. Mr. Cole, current administration moving us towards electric cars. Where does that leave us in the state of Louisiana?
I'll tell you, it leaves us in big trouble. We are an oil-based economy. And so where will Louisiana be? Who has a plan? No candidate for governor has a plan for that. I do. This is where we're going. And this is why we have to act now. This is why it is important that I am elected as your next governor. The technology for nuclear fusion is coming on us. And that means that when that goes, oil goes. Now, what we do have is we've got the oil arteries that run from this state to the rest of the country. We are the perfect place to put a fusion plants here in Louisiana to bring jobs, to replace those jobs that are going to be gone, and to bring those ideas into our universities. I look forward to being your governor.
Thank you. That's Mr. Daniel Cole. The question next goes to you, Mr. Xavier Ellis, the current administration moving us towards electric cars. Where does it leave us in the state of Louisiana?
So my take on this would be, what are our priorities as a state? Because I was just in Lafayette recently at Brown Skillet and I saw the little electrical hookup. Do we have the infrastructure for that? Do we have the wherewith to keep that going? Because I would say, I'm going on record and say this, that I'm a traditionalist in that our bread and butter is the oil and gas industry. We can't get away from that and go straight to electrical and everything be shuck and drive and be good. Because right now, when I look around the state, I don't see us having the infrastructure for this move. So I would say, let's look at the budget, let's look at our priorities as a state and prioritize what needs to be prioritized. Not saying that we can't get to a point of having electrical cars and it being all throughout the down the state and it being a bang, bang, bang. But we got to look at what's our bread and butter, what is it that we're going to do for our state that's going to continue to move us forward and let us be one of the powerhouses rather than the doormats of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Hunter Lundy up next. Mr. Lundy, we're moving towards electric cars. Where does that leave us in the state of Louisiana?
I think that, the market is driving what's taking place today. And so the marketplace is looking what the present administration is doing. So we have clean energy projects going on right now. Last week, former clients of mine announced that they're building a green hydrogen plant in Calcasieu Parish. They're going to build them all over the state. And the reason why they're using solar power to do it with, that's a green product. And so the reason they're doing it is because all of Europe, the maritime industry is going to methanol. They're quitting using bunkers, which is a diesel-based, carbon-based product. So I believe that electric cars will be out of the market soon. You can't run a trucking business on electric cars. We can't run our interstate highways on electric cars. So even Elon Musk said that hydrogen does a better job. And so I see the electric cars, yes, they came in, but I see them going out. And I see we're going to have a double-tracking industry. We're going to have clean energy. We're going to have oil and gas again. And so we'll have a lot of jobs for Louisiana.
Thank you. That's Hunter Lundy. Everybody got a shot at that one, right? Y'all keep me straight if I mess this up tonight. The next question comes down to Mr. Scurlock. Mr. Frank Scurlock, what's something that another state is doing that you'd take that idea and you'd steal it and bring it back to Louisiana?
Oh, wow. As I mentioned previously, I was blessed in my business career to have locations in over 35 states. We opened up 500 locations of our inflatables. I found out one thing, people want to have fun. So one thing we do right in the south part, and really the whole state, we're so different. We are truly a sports paradise. We know how to feed each other. We know how to have great sports, entertainment, the birthplace of jazz. We're going to amplify our tourism business. If there's one thing we need to do, it's enhance that. Most people know that Walt Disney himself preferred to come to Louisiana before he went over to Florida. Well, I happen to live in the Disney community of Celebration for 12 years. I ended up there because I was a victim of crime in the city of New Orleans back in 2000. So what did I learn there? I learned that when you build attractions, people come to them. And you talked about an international airport. We've got a great new terminal in New Orleans, and we're ready to expand it and use it. So it's tourism generates income.
Thank you, Mr. Scurlock. Mr. Daniel Cole, that question goes to you next. What's something another state is doing and you take that idea and steal it and bring it back to Louisiana?
Well, let's just take Texas, for instance. Average citizens in Texas pay $89 per citizen to run their government. And they've got the best economy. So why don't we do what Texas is doing and do it here in Louisiana? The same businesses outside of the state pay taxes in Texas, pay property taxes. They don't do it here. It's time to stop it, and its time is now. If we're seriously going to change things, we've got to fundamentally change the way that we do things here in Louisiana. The ITAP program has to be set to what it was intended to do and not used for a political tool to feed out and buy off politicians. You look down the road and you see how the people are backed by this pack and that pack and at this fact. It is because they are bought out. Come on, 1 and 1 equals 2. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Daniel Cole. Mr. Xavier Ellis, that question goes to you next. An idea another state is doing that you would steal and bring back to Louisiana.
So, I would say also, look at Texas. When you talk about Texas, there's restaurants galore. There's money galore. There's places to stay galore. There's people that's over here that's jumping to go to Texas. And it's because of the economic opportunity. So when we look at Texas, state income tax, they don't have that. We got to get to a point where we take that ideal and bring that over here. We also need to bring the ideal of, hey, economic opportunities and say, hey, let me make sure that I'm not just hiring somebody because I know them, but rather, hey, if you want to work, we're going to put you to work. That's what we got to get to. Get out of this corrupt politician and politics that we have here in Louisiana and focus on getting the people and bringing their needs forth and bringing that. We can't just have redundancy. In Texas, you don't have redundancy. You have opportunities. You have different things. And that's what we need here in Louisiana. And that's what I would say. Start with the state income tax and then go into the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Xavier Ellis. The question next goes to Mr. Hunter Lundy. Mr. Lundy, what's an idea that another state's doing that you would take and steal and bring back to Louisiana?
The first thing Governor Huckabee did when she went into office in Arkansas, I admired she got the LEARNS Act passed. And so that act started every teacher with a pay of $50,000, and the only debt that was forgiven by the state was a teacher debt. And so we can incentivize kids, our children, to go back and be education majors, be here at ULM, at East, wherever they're featuring education. And that debt can be forgiven. And so you get your top students back into education. And so we start them at $50,000. We may start them at more. I mean, we have some parishes in Louisiana, like St. Helena, I think they started $33,000. We have to get our teacher pay up. And so when we make a promise, we keep a promise. We don't give them a stipend. We give them the raise that we told them. So that's that. Then she created a performance enhancement in the program. The LEARNS Act does many different things, and I don't have time to explain it all. But that's something I'm focused on, and that's something I will do as the next governor.
Thank you. That's Hunter Lundy. Mr. Richard Nelson, question goes to you. An idea another state's doing that you'd steal and bring back to Louisiana.
So, one of the funny things is in Louisiana, we're used to saying, thank God for Mississippi, or else we'd be last in everything, right? Well, there are some things that Mississippi actually does better than us, and one of them is insurance. I think probably everybody in this room, at least since I'm from St. Tammany Parish, I hear all the time that, hey, I can't afford my insurance premiums, I'm moving to Mississippi. So, car insurance in Mississippi is half what it is in Louisiana. It's just because of our laws. Our laws are different on insurance, and so that regulation, the way that it works is that in Mississippi, you pay half the premiums. Same thing with homeowners insurance. It's about a third less in Mississippi. And so I'm used to people moving to Texas and Florida. I don't like it, but I get it. But when people tell me that they're moving to Mississippi, that makes me mad. And so I think when you look at the insurance crisis that's rolling over Louisiana, whether it's in homeowner insurance, whether it's in car insurance, we have to fix that problem. People have to be able to afford their homes. People have to be able to afford their car insurance so they can get to work. And I think you really have to look at how their insurance laws are structured in Mississippi and other states that are also competitive, but Mississippi's just right next to us with similar challenges. And, they don't have bad faith damages. They don't have a lot of the things we have here. We have to look at changing that so that we can have affordable insurance for everyone.
Thank you. That is Mr. Richard Nelson. And everybody get a shot at that, all right? All right, moving down to you, Mr. Cole. You're up next. What are your thoughts on changes in child care funding, and how will that impact our future workforce?
Well, we have to put our children first. And if we put our children, to put our children first, we've got to pay the people that teach them. We cannot have economic prosperity without giving a teacher a fair, decent wage. It has been going down ever since. Every time that a teacher gets a raise, they up the insurance. What we gross really actually goes down, has gone down over the last 10 years. I'm going to stop it. You're going to get your raise.
Thank you. That's Mr. Daniel Cole. Mr. Xavier Ellis, what are your thoughts on changes in child care funding, and how will that impact our future workforce?
Well, As I was looking the other day at a webinar and I saw this parent talking about this issue, it hits home with me because I have a 3-year-old and I have a niece who's in the back, and we deal with these child care issues and things like that. So what I would say is that, kind of doubling down what Mr. Cole said, we definitely need to fund our teachers. We definitely need the ones that are raising our kids when we're not around and having to work. We need to make sure that they're getting the funding that they need. But we also need to look at what's going on in our culture. There's a movement, if y'all not aware, of fatherless movement, of taking the men out of the household, taking the women, that sort of thing, and destroying families. So when you look at your next governor, you need a governor who's going to look at keeping the family intact, keeping those things intact and working to do those things, because we can't have our fathers, and I don't care what you say, mama, daddy, uncle, the children need their dads as well as their mothers. They can't just do it by themselves with just aunties and grandmas and that sort of thing. You need the whole village, including the father. So look at that issue as well when we talk about this child care issue.
Thank you. That's Xavier Ellis. Mr. Hunter Lundy, the question goes to you. Your thoughts on the changes in child care funding and how does that impact our future workforce?
We have 800,000 single-parent families in Louisiana, 800,000. And so you have these children coming out of single-parent families, many of them coming out of second and third generation poverty. And so we've got to provide child care benefits for single moms who are probably working 2 jobs. You'll hear my TV commercial that started this week. I'm the only candidate that's going to say we need to increase the minimum wage. We've got to give people hope. And so we've got to give mothers who are working 2 and 3 jobs, we got to have our priorities straight. So we're going to, yes, our families, we have a lot of fatherless families, and yes, that's a hard issue that needs to change. But right now, as the governor, we need to take care of the needs of the people. And so we got to have benefits for child care. We got to have paid moms, get them educated for when they are having the second job, they can have more money to take care of the needs, and we can go into the poverty level and the earnings in Louisiana. And then we don't have enough time for that, but I'll be happy to answer those questions later.
Thank you. That's Hunter Lundy. Mr. Richard Nelson, your thoughts on changes in child care funding and how does that change impact our future workforce?
So increasing access to early child education, especially high-quality early child education, I think is one of the best anti-poverty programs we can possibly do. I think that advocating that is one of the foundational ways that we can change the future of Louisiana is something that I've done for a while. I think that providing access to the children so they walk, basically from the time they're born to the time they walk into kindergarten, that they're able to get programming that teaches them their letters, their numbers, how to play with other kids, their colors. Being able to walk into kindergarten and being able to read a little bit at least, and having familiarity with how to follow instructions. These are things that can really change the generational challenges that we've had in Louisiana with poverty. And I think there's actually decades of research that show the impacts that has. And most brain development happens before kids turn 5, so you really have to get them early. And then it has the second benefit with workforce, is that it really frees up their parents to be able to go and work and contribute to the workforce. So you have the benefit of children who will one day be in the workforce, being better prepared, being better able to succeed in school, and you have their parents who are able to go and contribute. So I think it's really just a win-win with a huge return on investment for the taxpayer.
Thank you. That's Richard Nelson. The question next to Mr. Frank Skurlock. Mr. Skurlock, your thoughts on changes in child care funding and how do those changes impact our future workforce?
Well, the very first thing I would say is we need to hit the reset button. As someone has participated in over 500,000 birthday parties for children, we certainly know it well. So here it goes. You ready? Start counting these down. The baby's on the house. Why do we not have state-funded welcomes to new citizens? We should, especially out of New Orleans. Think about it. We paid for so many of them already. We might as well do it right. Second, we talk about teachers. I'll go on record here right now tonight. Within 4 years of me taking office, we will double all teachers and educators' salaries. How do we afford this? It's easy. We increase the population. You might recall I said I lived at Disney. Look into the villages of Central Florida. I'm working with developers that are proposing master plan communities that will bring in, especially for senior citizens, a new tax base to this city and this state that's never been seen, plus the economic generators from Louisiana's tourism.
That is Mr. Frank Skurlock. We'll take a break right here. You're listening to the KEDM Meet the Candidates Forum. We're live at ULM tonight. Tonight's program being brought to you by Homeland Bank. We'll take a quick break and back in just a moment. All right, we'll take a quick 2-minute break. For our internet audience, thanks for being with us. A reminder, we're back next week here at ULM. We're going to do this all over again with the House and Senate folks. And Jay, you're up next. So you'll punch up the wide shot and come on down. I got some water. Hey, y'all need some water? Y'all all cold? We got some water.
Okay,
1 minute. For our internet folks, we got a room full of folks tonight, and we invite everybody in the internet land to be back out with us next Tuesday night for a House and Senate Forum here. And again, we'll carry it on KEDM and on Facebook and social media, and a chance for you to come out and talk to the candidates one-on-one.
30 seconds.
And for those of you in the room, be sure and stop the candidates and talk to them before they, some of them will have to get back to South Louisiana here in a bit, but be sure to grab them and talk to them on their way out this evening.
15 seconds.
All right, Jay, you're coming up.
10, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5.
This is 90.3 KEDM Public Radio. Good evening, I'm Corey Crow. You're listening to KEDM Monroe. We're a community service of the University of Louisiana Monroe, and tonight we're at ULM, and we're in the 7th floor of the beautiful ULM library. We've got a room full of folks. Our media folks are here, and we've got a room full of candidates who are with us this evening that we're asking questions of to find out where they stand on the issues. Don't forget, we're back next week. We do this again with the House and Senate candidates in Ouachita Parish, and we'll be right back here at 6 o'clock in the 7th floor of the ULM library. So we hope to see you then for that event. Next, I'd like to bring up our KEDM Director of Broadcasting, Mr. Jay Curtis, to talk to you a little bit about KEDM, and we'll get back to our candidates and our questions.
Thank you, Corey. First of all, thank you, candidates, for being here and making time in your very busy schedules to make this happen. Thank you to everyone who's in the room. Thank you for being a part of the political process. Thank you for being an informed voter, because we know informed voters make better decisions and are capable of moving Louisiana forward. That's what we're a part of here at KEDM Public Radio. It's not about the political power. It's not about the political parties. It's not about the political systems. It's about creating informed voters, because that's how we change Louisiana for the better. We're working to improve the quality of life for everybody who calls Louisiana home. Public radio is a part of that. We've been a part of that for over 30 years now, and we're grateful to the folks, including many people in this room, many people who are watching, and Dr. Berry. We're thankful for the patronage of the university. We're part of the University of Louisiana Monroe, but we're also a partially self-funded entity. So I would be remiss as we head into fall fundraising season if I didn't also ask you for your membership to KEDM. We can only do what we do, bringing you candidate forums like this, bringing you daily news coverage from around the country, around Louisiana, and around the world, with the support of people who live in Northeast Louisiana and the support of businesses who work and create jobs and create economic growth in Northeast Louisiana. So if you'd like to join us and become a member of KEDM, become a part of an organization that's working to create a better future for our area, for our region of Northeast Louisiana, please make a gift on our website. It's at kedm.org. It takes just a couple of minutes. Choose the amount that you'd like to give, and then help us grow the quality of life in Northeast Louisiana with a gift to KEDM today. Thank you.
And this is 90.3 KEDM Monroe. Thanks for being with us this evening. I'm Corey Crow. I'm the news director at KEDM Public Radio, and we're at ULM tonight. We're talking with the candidates who are running for governor of Louisiana. And I want to ask our next question to Mr. Xavier Ellis. Mr. Ellis, how do you keep young Louisianians here in Louisiana?
You give them economic opportunities. You address the issues in the room of the simple fact of attractions. As one of my opponents talked about, you gotta give attractions. You gotta give them jobs. As a former teacher, you gotta get the teacher pay raise issue dealt with. You gotta give them a reason to stay. At any point where we're paying our career politicians north of $100,000 a year, our teachers gotta get to that 80 and 80 threshold, or 65, 80 based on performance and based on their credentials and things, so that they can want to stay here. Because the young people, once you give them jobs, you give them opportunities, they're going to stay around. But as this guy that's speaking to y'all right now, I got 1 foot in the state and 1 foot out. But it's based on this election, because we need change. And we need somebody that can not only unite the old people, but the young people as well. And that's what I'm standing here doing today, as a uniter, young and old.
Thank you. That's Xavier Ellis. Mr. Hunter Lundy, how do you keep young folks in Louisiana?
We have to change the perception outside the state to where we no longer have an issue with poverty. Our education can be improved, especially in our childhood education. We have to invest more. That does, in fact, reduce incarceration later in life. That is a great investment. But my 3 children live here. My daughter got 1 degree from LSU. She got a master's from LSU Shreveport. She got a master's from McNeese. My youngest son got his degree from Louisiana Tech, and he got another degree from Texas A&M. My other son got a degree from McNeese. We're all living here. The 2 brothers live next to each other in Boulevard Parish, and yes, we've been fighting the fires to keep their houses from burning. And so my daughter is in Lake Charles, so we're vested here. We love this state. This state is the best state in the land, as the old song goes, where they do grow the sugar cane so grand. And we have the Mississippi River, and we have the Calcasieu Ship Channel. We have all these waterways that feed the economy. So we can use wisdom and priorities. We can pay our teachers, our law enforcement people, and our firemen, and we can change the perception of Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Hunter Lundy. The question next goes to Richard Nelson. Mr. Nelson, how do you keep young folks in the state of Louisiana?
So I was a young folk who got up and left and found a better opportunity outside of the state, and then I came back to try and build that for more people. And so I think you really have to look at what drives people. It's, like I said, jobs and opportunity. And how do you bring that here? Like I said, I think comprehensive tax reform that, one, makes the state more competitive from a business perspective, to locate businesses and for professionals to move here. And then also, I think, is that you have more effective government through that tax reform, because you put more on local governments to solve people's problems instead of sending all that money to Baton Rouge, so that you have things like fixing the crime, fixing roads, fixing education. Those are all really local issues. In Louisiana, we rely on the state to do that. We want the state to solve those problems, which it's not very good at. And so we really have to have local governments have the ability to solve those problems for themselves, and that's what you see in states where people are moving. We're losing about 40,000 people a year, so these are big challenges we have to fix. I think education is really the second fundamental problem there, because if you have to pay for your kids to go to private school, $15,000 a year, no one's going to stay here, no one's going to move here when that challenge is there. So you really have to have effective and high-quality public schools. You see that in other states where people are moving to, and we need to have that here.
Thank you. That's Richard Nelson. Mr. Frank Skurlock, the question goes to you next. How do you keep young Louisianians here in Louisiana?
It's all about jobs, jobs, and jobs. As I mentioned earlier, with our inflatable manufacturing facility, which was all based domestically in New Orleans, we were devastated when Katrina hit. So in order to meet our needs, sadly, we had to go to Asia. So I opened up a China factory to build our inflatables. It was fun for a while.
going to Hong Kong, Beijing and stuff, but I saw not only what was affecting our state, but our nation. We've outsourced ourselves. We have to turn that around and bring it all back here. We need to be an exporter, not an importer. A second ago, I went on record by saying within 4 years in office, we would double teacher salary. I'll go on record now and say we need a $20 an hour minimum wage. No one can exist without it. You can't go buy a po' boy, a bag of chips, and a Coke for $1 less. So it's all about jobs, 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 and that will come with the industry that a true leader that brings people together will do.
Thank you. That's Mr. Frank Skurlock. Mr. Daniel Cole, how do you keep young folks in the state of Louisiana?
Well, I have to say that I agree with everybody, but I have an extra idea. This is my idea. If you receive funding from the state of Louisiana, whether it be TOPS, whether it be vocational, you have to stay in Louisiana 4 years. We give them an occupation. The least they can give us is 4 years to live here and to be established here. That's what we must do. They go free. People don't appreciate anything that's free. We need to give them accountability. 4 years. Solve the problem.
Thank you. That's Mr. Daniel Cole. All right. I want to change up the rules a second. Just give me a yes/no on a couple of things here. Teacher raises. Mr. Cole.
Yes.
Enthusiastic there. Mr. Xavier Ellis.
Yes.
Teacher raises.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Lundy. Teacher raises.
Yes.
Mr. Richard Nelson.
Yes.
And Mr. Frank Skurlock.
Out of the park, yes.
I told somebody I announced football on the side. I did 7 football games this weekend. The guy sitting next to me was a teacher. He said, "You better ask that question." So put that one in there for him. All right, Mr. Lundy. We talk about funding things, but I want to ask, is there something that you would cut from government or something you would cut from government funding? Like a program or something you see that doesn't need to be in the Louisiana budget?
Well, I would do a better job of compliance because we have a lot of money that's been spent for work that's not being performed. I would look at we're going to have clear transparency when I'm governor. We got the broadband money now to go completely statewide to have internet access. People will be able to watch where the money comes in, where it goes, and how it's spent, the timeline it's done. So I would do that. I would certainly not let a legislative session end like it did this year, where there was concurrent and nobody got to see what was in it. Today we now know all the pet projects that were funded in millions of dollars when we were denying our teachers a pay raise, when we were not fixing our roads. They fought over trying to lift the cap. We should have lifted the cap. I could go on, but it's waste. That's what I would cut first, and then I would talk about other programs that we need to cut.
Thank you. That's Hunter Lundy. Next, a question to Mr. Richard Nelson. Is there something that you would cut from Louisiana government or Louisiana funding?
So I've been a fierce critic of the film tax credit program in my time in the legislature. We spend about $180 million a year on film tax credits. Most of this goes to California movie producers. To put that in perspective, we spend about $125 million, so significantly less on the entire community and technical college system in the state. So when you're looking at the bang for your buck for taxpayers, it's really not there. We get about, I think it's like 6.5 cents on the dollar back for every dollar we spend on the program. So I've offered that to anybody. If you want to give me a dollar, I'll give you 6 cents back, and I'll have the same return that we're giving the taxpayers on that program. To put it in perspective too, is we spent $170 million supporting the show New Orleans NCIS or whatever. It's like that's more than we spent on the entire NOPD. So imagine if we spent that money actually fighting crime instead of pretending to fight crime. Would have been a lot better. So anyway, I think it's not a great program for the state, and that was one I would cut.
Thank you. That's Richard Nelson. Mr. Frank Skurlock, something you would cut from Louisiana government or funding?
Well, this might not make a lot of people currently in office happy, but I think all of our public servants should be actually public servants. That's who we need to cut. We need to hold them accountable. Because when they make a decision,
Just like in a spiritual state as we are, at a clergy, at a church, pastors should not go around, how can I get the highest amount of return or dollar? They have to be a servanthood based. That's what we're all about. So we need to serve, not to take. Look at President Trump. Trust me, he didn't go to office to make money. He went there to lead and serve. That's what business leaders do. At the end of the day, it's the economy. That's what it's all about. Every program, it's incentives to get people here. I strongly disagree with what was just said about the tax for relief and incentives. They need to be held accountable, and it needs to stay here, but it does have to be justifiable. So that we have to make sure that we get a fair return for everything we invest in, and that starts with elected officials.
Thank you. That's Frank Skurlock. The question now comes to Mr. Daniel Cole. Mr. Cole, something that you see you might cut from Louisiana government or funding?
Well, I'm going to be about the people's business. I'm not going to be bought out. And I will prove this in the fact that we need to make sure that our kids have a quality education. We have some great private schools in this state. I'm not talking about all the private schools, but we've got some children that are not being educated. They should not be receiving state funding. They should go through the same accountabilities as state accountabilities. If you receive state funding, you should have state accountability. This is what makes us teachers so upset, is because we play by a different set of rules and everybody else just gets by.
Thank you. That's Daniel Cole. Mr. Xavier Ellis, something you see that you might cut from Louisiana government or funding?
So I want to start off by saying, since I was 17, I've been having to budget and do budgeting and be the man of the house. I'm nicknamed the budget man, as my sister in the back can tell you. So I don't do anything without looking at first the needs of the people and the needs. So when I look at this issue and this question of cutting, we first need to look at the needs. Then, if we got wants, hey, that comes secondary. That's how I roll. That's how you roll a household. That's how you roll a government, a state government. So what I would say is before I go to cutting, I want to look at everything, meet with my team once I'm in the office and look at all those things and see where we have room to grow. I mean, I get where my opponent went with that, with the film industry, but I want to also just look at everything from straight down the line and see where we can actually go. So right now, I would say that that's on the table to look at where we can cut, because I don't want to just say I'm going to cut this and cut that, because then, as y'all know, your interest groups, your people are going to be mad if you just go and say, hey, I'm going to cut this and cut that. And I don't play the game of promises. I'm about being honest and transparent with my people. Thank you.
Thank you. That is Mr. Xavier Ellis. All right, gang, I got so many more questions, but we're out of time. I'm going to ask one more last question, and then we'll get to our closing statements. Give me a quick, 1 or 2 word answer. And let's start down on the end with Mr. Skurlock. Mr. Skurlock, if I made you king today, or I made you governor, and you had superpowers, you could do one thing as governor of the state of Louisiana. What's the one thing that you would do?
I would restore hope, because without hope, we have nothing. We should be a religious state and bring everybody together. That's why we have Louisiana Purchase and why we have parishes, not counties.
Thank you. Mr. Cole, one thing you would do if you had superpower. You can do anything as governor, one thing.
I will. It will be with an executive order. ITAP will do what it was sent to do. All these programs in the state, I will do what they were intended to do and take politics out of the way.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Mr. Ellis, you can do one thing. What's it going to be?
If I could do one thing, it would be to wave a magic wand and bring the needs of the people forth in every municipality around the state. Whether that's a skating rink in Appaloosa, whether that's Bastrop, needing restaurants, whether that's the people needing our college grads to stay here and work and be here. That would be what I would do, bring the needs of the people forth.
Thank you. Mr. Hunter Lundy, I'm giving you the superpowers. You get to do one thing as governor. What's it going to be?
Well, superpowers, I'm going to say I pray that everybody would love God. If that's what you're asking me to do, because I love God, I love people, I try to live it out. And that's what we all have to do. And when we do that, we change our priorities. When we change our priorities, we have a difference in life. So we have a difference in the way we treat people, the needs that are met, the actions that we take. So I'm going to just say that. You're giving me that power, and I don't have that power. I mean, God lives in me, but I don't have his power. I would say I want everybody to love God.
Thank you. That's Mr. Hunter Lundy. Mr. Richard Nelson, you got superpowers. What's your one thing?
I would rewrite the Constitution. That's where most of our problems are. We have a very long Constitution. That's why all y'all have to vote on every amendment every time. There's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't belong there, and really that's where we codify the 100 years of Huey Long that's really holding us back. So I would clean that out, make it really a document of fundamental law, and restructure the state of Louisiana so that we can compete with our neighbors and let local communities solve people's problems.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all of you gentlemen being with us tonight. I had so many great questions. And it's time, though, for closing statements. Before we get there, I got some folks I need to say thank you to. The ULM Student Government Association. Thank you for hosting this event. And we're going to be back here again on Tuesday night to do this again with the House and Senate candidates. The West Monroe, West Ouachita Chamber of Commerce. Chris, thank you to your team. Thank you to the volunteers who are working here tonight. Thank you, guys. And I need to say thanks to the Monroe Chamber of Commerce, and also to our chief engineer over there, Kenneth Sanders. He's keeping us on the air tonight. Thank you, Kenneth. Thanks to Jenny. We appreciate you. Jay Curtis, thank you. And now we get to the fun part, the closing statements. And we drew earlier, our first closing statement tonight will be from Mr. Hunter Lundy. Mr. Lundy, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Sure. You know, I'm a Christian. I'm an independent. I've traveled the state for the past 18 months. When I left the practice of law, I knew I was going to run for governor, and I told people I'm leaving the courthouse and I'm going to the Capitol. And so what I've learned is that, you know, I'm not beholden to any political party. I'm not beholden to any pack, any group, or anything. The only fear I have is the fear of the Lord. And I've learned that the state of Louisiana is looking for somebody who's credible that can beat our Attorney General for governor. And I feel like I'm the only one that can do that. And so I am moving forward in a bold sort of way to win this race. And why I'm going to do that? Because I do believe we can improve. We got great people. We have people, even though we may not all be of the same faith, but we have people of common sense and that have a moral compass. And so we can move forward. And so that's why I'm doing it. My call in life was always to help people. And that call has never left. And so my call is I'll go out of this world with boots on the ground, and I'll do it to try to help people. Because we need a better health. We need better health care. That's a big issue we never talked about tonight. And I'm not talking about universal health care. I'm just talking about better health care. We need better insurance. When we start the session, we'll have an insurance session immediately. So we've got to have that changed. We need our education. We need our teachers paid, our policemen paid, and our firemen paid. And so we need to do a lot of different things. And so I have a plan. I've had a vision since day one. I've worked on policy. And so we will do what we have to do. 27 years ago, I ran for Congress. I'd never run for public office before. I lost in a runoff. It was never meant to be. I thank God I lost. I ended up being a single dad raising a son who today is 36 years old and a ship captain. So I'm in a position now that I can serve the state of Louisiana. And I'm asking you for your vote. Go look at LundyForLouisiana.com or Hunter Lundy Governor. Check me out. I want your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lundy. Mr. Richard Nelson, 2 minutes for a closing statement.
So I'm 37 years old. I'm an Eagle Scout, an engineer, an attorney, former diplomat. I've been in state legislature for 4 years. I don't waste my time. And I will tell you, Louisiana doesn't have a lot of time. We have significant challenges here, but we also have significant opportunities. We have all the resources in the world. Every state should be envious of what Louisiana has. The problem is that we have 100 years of bad government, and that's been holding us back. So I'm the only candidate that's brought forth concrete plans. I've brought bills in the legislature to accomplish all the things that I've talked about here today, to fix our education system, to fix our tax code, to bring jobs and opportunity, to improve the critical situation of crime. I have actually brought these bills to do it, to fix higher education. These are things that I've brought. I fought for in the legislature. Unfortunately, they're battles you have to win as governor. That's the way that it's been structured, and that's the only place that you can get it done. That's why I'm running for governor, is because I think you need fundamental change to really make Louisiana everything everybody wants it to be. And I'll leave you with this. If this was college football, and we lost to every state every year, we would fire the coach, we would fire the trainers, we'd even fire the mascot. And yet in Louisiana, we keep sending the same politicians, running the same plays every year, and we don't get anywhere. So, if you're happy with the status quo, if you're happy losing 40,000 people a year, there's plenty of candidates in this race. Pick anyone, Democrat, doesn't matter. Democrat, Republican, doesn't make any difference. But if you want that 40 years of your life back, if you want that 33% raise, I am the only candidate that has concrete plans to get that done, and I promise you I will do it as governor. Thank you very much, Richard Nelson, running for governor. Thank you for having me tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Frank Scurlock, 2 minutes, sir, for a closing statement.
Well, once again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. As a New Orleans native, it was a pleasure to come up here, and I look forward to spending time around the campus tomorrow. We talked about a lot of topics, but we missed a few as well. Insurance, we can spend hours on that because that affects everybody, especially down south by us with all the perils of what happened on this day 18 years ago. Katrina changed the face of the state. Ida did it not so long ago as well. So you know what it takes? It takes people coming together, and we're good people. We really are. So it takes a person to unite. That's what I've done in my whole business career. I bring people together. That's what having fun is about. Sure, we have work to do. We've got to roll up our sleeves and get to it. Education, absolutely. That's where it all starts. Well, all of our children, our grandchildren, that's why I'm passionate about doubling teachers' pay within 4 years. We need to attract and maintain senior citizens, communities. We are all getting older every day. But we can't do any of this without crime, the riddance of crime. The one thing, we need to have a memorial moment to stop it, and it stops today. That's why Mr. Landry, God bless him, but I got to tell you, he's the current Attorney General. Look, I'm in New Orleans with a district attorney that's not quite sure why he's there, to tell you the truth. And if he can't hold a district attorney in New Orleans accountable, how can he run the state? It's all going to be about him. With all due respect to my colleagues here that are lawyers, it doesn't take a lawyer. It takes a leader with business, with experience, to bring people together. I'm Frank Scurlock. You can go to ScurlockWins, WINS.com. I'm candidate number 14. You know why I'm 14? Because we, like sports, we talked about how do we end up with 16 candidates. It's a sweet 16 in basketball. But at the end of the Final Four, there's going to be one person that will carry the torch for this state. Because I believe in this state. We believe in it because we're here. Let's do it in honor and justice for all.
Thank you. That's Mr. Frank Scurlock. Mr. Daniel Cole, sir, 2 minutes for a closing statement this evening.
We live with a political reality that there are two parties that govern this state. One is the Republican Party, there's good people in it, and the other is the Democratic Party, which I am proud to be a Democrat. And I'm asking for your vote. What will it be when a Republican takes office? It will be returning to gender. It will be returning to where we owe money, and everything will be bankrupt. You will not have representation. A vote for Cole is to make your voice count. I'm running to represent you to change. You can't be a part of the political system and change the system. You've got to come from without and come in. And it's going to take me with the Democrats as well as Republicans to change things. But it's going to take a moral person. I did not say this. I said this at the end, is that I'm a pastor. I teach school and I pastor a church. I want my actions to speak for my faith. And I hope that you see that in everything that I do. How can I begin to say anything until we solve the problems of the poor, rebuild the middle class, get rid of the ITAL program? If we have to, we've got to make sure that it's doing what it says that it's supposed to do. And we've got to make sure that every vote counts. You got to get out there and vote. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you for being with us. It's Mr. Daniel Cole. And Mr. Xavier Ellis, you have the final statement this evening. 2 minutes, sir.
Well, our scripture tells us that the last shall be first at some point. So what I would say to y'all is go back and do your homework, do your research on all of the candidates, including myself. What you will find out in 2012, I was according to the Louisiana Public Broadcasting Station, I was a young finalist for their award as a young hero. I'm running primarily, I can be honest with y'all tonight to say, I want to be an inspiration to this idea of we have low expectations in Louisiana, because I feel like we have greatness here. You just got to be poured out of us. I'm a student of history. I am 29, but I was, as y'all know, if y'all have heard of Cleo Fields, I'm not the youngest that has run for governor. That was probably Henry Warmoth. But I feel like we need to have a unifier, somebody that's a transformational leader, somebody that's not a transactional leader. There's a difference in those two. And I say I'm a transformational leader. You also need somebody, as a city marshal told me in Franklin, you need somebody that has been battle tested. My sister has walked out of the room, but she would tell you, and if you go back and do your homework, I'm battle tested. I've had many setbacks in life, but I haven't stopped at it. If you want a candidate that understands the ills of welfare, if you want a candidate that understands single parent household, how that goes, coming back from setbacks one after another, then I'm your candidate. We need a thinker, a creative in that governor's office. We don't need career politicians. We don't need a person that's just in it for special interest groups. What you have in Xavier Ellis is somebody that is ready to work, has proven that he can work at a young age, and has proven that, hey, don't be lost on my age. Give me the opportunity, and I'll show you what I can do with it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Mr. Xavier Ellis. Again, tonight's forum being made possible by our friends at Homeland Bank. I want to thank the Monroe Chamber of Commerce, the West Monroe, West Washita Chamber, the ULM Student Government Association, and KEDM Public Radio. A couple of quick notes before we get to the great Louisiana music on the boot. Thank you, boot audience, for hanging with us tonight. All right, to request an absentee ballot, your deadline is by Tuesday, October 10th at 4:30 p.m. The deadline to return that ballot is Friday the 13th, October 13th at 4:30 p.m. I didn't know we had a Friday the 13th coming up. Now I know it. Early voting begins on Saturday, October 7th. It begins on Saturday, September 30th, and it goes to October 7th. And that's every day excluding Sunday, October the 1st, 8:30 a.m. till 6 p.m. Now, if you don't know what you're voting on, watch this video again. You can also go to the Go Vote app. You'll find that at sos.la.gov. And a reminder, we're back here next Tuesday night, 6 p.m. We're on the 7th floor of the ULM Library for another in our series of Meet the Candidates forums. And next time, we're sitting down with the Senate candidates and the House candidates in the districts that have a piece in the Washita Parish. I'm Corey Crow, KEDM News Director. Have a great evening. Enjoy the music. You're listening to 90.3 KEDM Monroe.